March was a weird reading month for me. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now today's video is going to be my March wrap up. In March, it was a weird month for me because it was kind of the start of a reading slump. And it was more of a reading slump and also a creativity slump as well. As you can tell from my upload schedule, it has drastically changed. Instead of doing a regular maybe 2 to 3 videos a week, I've dialed it down from 2 videos a week, now dialed it down to once every week, and then if that, sometimes I even miss it once a week. So it's very delayed, and part of the reason why I delayed in uploading videos and also filming videos is because there has been some changes in my life, and I realized that, there's stuff that takes up a lot of time now. So unfortunately, I have to dial back on some YouTube activities and also some other social media activities as well. But I'm sure that once I feel motivated again and once I feel creative again, I can get back onto that schedule regardless of my work life. For reading wise, it was the beginning of a reading slump for me. I just didn't find any books that were of interest, that could keep me interested, that could keep me motivated to read as many books as possible. In the month of March, I think I read 60 books. And then in the month of January, I think I read at least 50 books. So you can tell that I'm doing pretty well. But in March, I actually only read 34 books, and that was kind of a bummer in my opinion. So with that being said, this reading wrap up will not include all 34 books that I did read in March, because that would just mean that I'll be sitting here for a very long time. So I'm only going to do the couple of highlights in the books that I think are worth your interest and your time to learn more about. So let's get started. So the first book that I do want to talk about is actually the third book in the series of Moose Spring series by Sarah McGonther, called Enjoy the View. Now, I really liked the second one. I felt like the second one was really interesting and really fun, but then the first book in the series was a little bit mediocre to me. So I was kind of nervous about going into Enjoy the View, but since I already started the trilogy, I thought that I might as well end the trilogy off. This one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. It started off really good and it was really fun, but then afterwards, towards the middle and the end, I struggle a lot with Sarah's works, mostly because her books are really thick and really long, and it's more character driven and plot driven as opposed to romance driven. So I was getting kind of bored with our characters kind of developing and growing into themselves and into their characters. So that's why I had to dial it down a notch and give it a lower rating. Now, this book follows kind of a Hollywood actress couple cliche trope. So our main heroine is actually an actress and she wants to be taken more seriously. So she decides to kind of take a step back and be behind the camera instead of being in front of the camera, and she goes into Moose Springs to film a documentary, and that's where she meets our hero, who is a gentle giant and who is really in tune with the wilderness and the forest, and he kind of helps her along the way of kind of integrating into this really small niche town that doesn't like strangers and doesn't like new people entering into their safe space and filming them when they don't want to be filmed. And this one was good, but like I said, it was just a little bit too long for me. So that's why it's only a 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I do want to talk about is Shipped by Angie Hockman. Now, when I saw this book cover, I was immediately drawn to it because it looks so pretty, it looks so fun, and the premise of it, of how our two characters are being forced to go on vacation with each other, sounded like the perfect getaway novel that I wanted to read during a time when Canada is still under lockdown, and even now in May, we are still under lockdown. So I wanted to kind of escape a bit, and I was really having high hopes for this book because I just thought that it would be really fun. I think this book was marketed as if you like The Hating Game, you'll like this one too, because it's an office enemies to lovers romance involving our heroine, who is a social media manager, and then our hero, who is also a social media manager. So, and then they both compete for this one position that the boss sets up, but then the one catch is that they have to go on vacation together, and then whoever comes up with the best marketing scheme will get the coveted position that the boss created. And while I did like the premise of this book, I felt like that the execution wise was just not up to my style. I find that office enemies to lovers romance can be really good or really bad, and this one just kind of fell down towards the line of kind of being a little bit predictable, a little bit cheesy, and it's not something that I really vibed well with, starting with the fact that they both started hating each other because of a miscommunication error, and I just hate that. Like, I hate it so much that you would that's the premise of the whole book, is miscommunication. I find that really weak, so I expected a little bit more from it. And also, if you guys don't know this, I actually didn't like The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, so I wasn't really sold on to the book because they marketed it that way. I was more resentful of the book because it was marketed that way. But regardless, being non-biased and actually separating these two books together, I still like Shipped better than The Hating Game, but it just was too predictable in my opinion. So in the month of March, I saw my friend Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers here on BookTube read a lot of mafia romance, and I wanted to get in on it because, you know, when your friends do something, you kind of want to do it before you miss it out on it. So I picked up a random mafia romance. Like always, I don't really go towards her recommendations. I go to like obscure titles that are in the genre of her recommendations. So the one book that I read was Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. Now this one is an arranged marriage trope, and it's from enemies to lovers. And then also these two families that are pitted against each other, and they kind of have like this ongoing like drama and beef, and they always get into fights with each other. So they decide to marry each other's like heir and heiress off so that they can have an alliance, so that they can beat other mafia gang related activities, groups, whatever we like to call it, in the area, so that they can protect the city. And this one was really fun. I found that this one was very dramatic and very interesting. It was my first time reading a mafia romance, so I really didn't know what to expect. Obviously, there was a lot of suspense and a lot of action scenes, which was really cool. And it had a lot of dark moments too, which I kind of appreciate because I sometimes like a little bit of dark romance in my romance. So this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, and it's part of a series called the Brutal Birthright series. Will I continue? Well, it's May and I haven't picked up book 2, so never mind. I actually did pick up book 2, but I completely forgot about it because I picked it up in March and now it's May and I just forgot about it. So it can also give you an indication of whether or not you should pick up this book or not, because clearly it wasn't as memorable because I completely forgot I read book 2 in the series of the Brutal Birthright series by Sophie Lark. Now this book is called Stolen Heir, and basically it's about 2 other characters, and then our hero, his father was actually brutally murdered, and then he comes out and becomes like kind of like an assassin, and then he rises within the ranks of the group, and then now he's like kind of like the king of the group. I don't know what you call it. He's the leader of the group, the leader of the pact. And then he decides to kidnap our heroine, and then afterwards this is their love story. So it's a captive romance love story between a very innocent character and then an also very dark, murky character who really just like does a lot of things that are obviously sinful and not good to society. So this one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't really like it as much as the first one. This one was still relatively good in a sense because I like my heroines kind of like really innocent, but there was just really nothing that was happening that kept me interested. So in March, it was a month where we saw a lot of activities happen in the Asian communities in America and also in Canada as well, but predominantly in America. And I wanted to spotlight and to focus more on Asian authors and to promote their voices. So I finally picked up one of the middle grade novels that was actually sent to me from Macmillan Kids, and then this one's called The Comeback by E.L. Shen, and this one is literally one of my favorite middle grade novels out there right now in the year 2021, and it's because it has the Asian representation that I needed back when I was a kid growing up in Canada, and most of the books that I was reading were very non-Asian. Like they featured people of color, but it was not really Asian representation, and it made me struggle growing up basically. So this book is about a Chinese young girl who is a figure skater who's very confident on ice, but once she gets off the ice, she is lacking in confidence because of her elementary school bully who taunts her and who makes racist remarks against her Chinese heritage and for making fun of her, of the way how she looks, how she acts, and like what her family represents and things like that. This book is a strong recommendation for me if you are Chinese yourself and if you want to see a little bit of your family in books that you might not get to see because, you know, we're struggling with representation in books nowadays. But this one had so many like Easter eggs and so many like nuggets of my childhood that I completely forgot and that I remember now because I read this book. Like they feature just like little things here and there that is common among the Chinese community and also common among the Asian community as well. This book absolutely made me bawl, made me cry so badly, and I actually ended up fangirling with the author E.L. Shen on Instagram because it just really touched my heart and I loved it so much. So please go ahead and read it even if you're not Asian yourself. If you just want an emotional story about a girl who is facing some racism at school in a predominantly white neighborhood, definitely go check it out. It's a 5 out of 5 stars for me. So middle grade novels definitely have a lot of diversity in them, so definitely go check them out because it's just freaking amazing, man. It's like so good. So the one book that I did pick up recently was A Place at the Table by Sadia Faruqi and Laura Chauvin. So I completely butchered their names, so I'm so sorry. This book is about two girls who come from very different cultures. We have one girl who's Pakistani American, and then we have another girl who is actually Jewish American, and they both come together from different families in different places to become friends. They put aside their differences and they both come together to learn more about each other's culture and about each other's communities and about each other's like, you know, struggles in middle grade as someone who is different from the rest. And then it's really good because it talks about like racism and microaggressions, and then it also talks about food itself, which was like really great because our main heroine, who is Pakistani American, her mom is actually a teacher at the school and teaches kids how to cook food that they commonly eat in their culture. And it was just fabulous. Loved it. Gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So I'm kind of jumping all over the place in this wrap up. I'm not going from one specific genre to the next. I'm just kind of looking through the list of books and just talking about it. So forgive me if this video is not going the way that you expect it to go. But the next book that I do want to talk about is kind of a book that I picked up at random in the middle of the night. Now, if you're a reader like me who likes to scroll through Amazon Kindle Unlimited in the middle of the night and pick up a saucy read and just binge it in the middle of the night and finish it at like 3 a.m., then this book is for you. So the book that I did pick up was Lord of Pains by Angel Lawson and Samantha Rue. Now this book was a polyamorous relationship book and it was like my first time reading it. I didn't realize it was polyamorous until I picked it up and I noticed that our heroine was actually attracted to 3 guys instead of just 1 guy. And what I liked about this book was that it was kind of like a very beginner step level to a polyamorous novel. It didn't just go straight into like 3 people and 1 girl. It kind of went into like each individual character's point of view and you falling in love with each of them, and you kind of don't know which one you should pick, like the dark and moody one, the sweet and caring one, or like the quiet, shy, smart one. Like you don't know. So this book was about a girl who was bullied by her stepbrother and his friends, and then they all end up kind of like liking her and starting a relationship with her. Despite it sounding like I really enjoyed it, I still have to critique it on a level of whether or not this story was believable and if it was kind of realistic. Although it's like definitely like one of those novels that are more fantasy based and more emotionally driven, I still had to critique it and give it a 2 out of 5 stars. Am I eagerly awaiting for book number 2? Yes, I am. I actually am, because I really want to know what happens to our female heroine, because she was really wronged in the whole book because she was consistently being bullied by the characters, and I just really wanted her to have her last say and to really triumph, to really have that triumph and succeed and have victory. I think one of the main reasons why I kind of entered into a slump was because my most anticipated reads ended up being my most disappointed reads. So the one book that I was really excited to read was actually 10 Rules for Faking It by Sophie Sullivan. Now this one I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. This one is about our main heroine who is a radio host, and then she has a really bad day and she gets dumped by her boyfriend, and then she makes like this really loud comment on air and everybody could hear it on the radio stations about how she can't find a proper man to date, and then suddenly like all these men want to date her, and then afterwards her boss filters out like the applications, but then in reality like her boss actually likes her and then she likes her boss. So this is kind of like an office friends to lovers romance. Our boss is very conservative, he's very professional, he doesn't want to have a workplace relationship, so you can see him kind of struggling back and forth on whether or not he wants to pursue her. But then afterwards our main heroine is kind of like going on these dates and having her own mental breakdown and things like that. So this one kind of predictable once again. I don't know why, but I really struggled with romance novels that were really predictable. I wanted something different from the regular formula and trope that, you know, sometimes romance novels have. So this one I ended up giving a 2 out of 5 stars. I was just bored, and it wasn't what I was expected. So the next book that I did read was Much Ado About You by Samantha Young, and now this book sounded so cute. Samantha Young wrote Fight or Flight, or Flight or Fight. I don't know which one it was, but she wrote that one a long time ago, a couple years back now, with Berkeley Romance, and I liked it, but I didn't like it a lot. So I was kind of hesitant going into Much Ado About You, but this one I had to go into it because our main heroine basically experiences the holiday. If you guys didn't know the Christmas movie The Holiday starring Jack Black, Cameron Diaz, Jude Law, and Kate Winslet, then definitely go watch that movie because I feel like that this book is based on that movie. So our main heroine just lives a really shitty life, and then she decides to pack up her things and go on vacation. And her vacation actually is this cottage in this very like obscure place in, I think, Scotland. And then afterwards, a part of her staying there includes her actually working at a bookstore where she hears a lot about the town gossip, and she learns about the different characters in the town. And then there she falls in love with our main hero, who is also a farmer, which sounds like the picturesque like book and novel and place to really transport yourself when you're feeling down in the dumps. So I really wanted to like this book. This one I thought was really fun, and it was so relaxing and calming when I was reading it, but this one I still gave it only a 3 out of 5 stars, mostly because there wasn't enough like jazz for me to like give it up like a higher than 3 out of 5 stars. Still would recommend you to pick it up if it's on your list of books that you want to read. So the next book that I did read was Fat Chance Charlie Vega by Crystal Maldonado. Completely butchered her name too, I'm so sorry. So this one I wanted to read more books that featured Latinx characters and also Latinx authors, mostly because I feel like that I don't read enough of their books, and I want to read those books so that I can learn more about cultures that I don't know much about yet. So this one is about a girl who is bigger than the rest, and she is often criticized by peers around her for her body shape and for her body size. And then afterwards, this is the story of her figuring out how to embrace herself while also like having other people understand that she is in love with herself and falling in love with someone too. This book also featured her kind of being jealous of her friends who were skinnier than her, and it focused a lot on body image. So this book is definitely not targeted towards me, so that's why I feel like you need to take my rating with a grain of salt. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars, mostly because I don't I don't understand, like I'm not in the position to understand our characters' emotions, mostly because it's not relatable to me since I have a healthy relationship with my mom. And while I struggle with my body shape and my self-esteem a lot of the times, it's definitely not as severe as the characters. So that's why I feel like that people who can relate to our character will definitely like this book a lot more, since this book is a lot of character-driven plot points, and you would see yourself in the book more, as opposed to me who can't understand it because I'm not like Charlie, in the sense of where her social economic status is, where her body image status is, and her relationship status with her family. So this one was just not for me. I didn't really like it. Gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I also, if we were to also not just focus on our main character and her struggles with her body image, and we were just going to strictly talk about like the romance development and the resolution of her and her mom and things like that. I felt like Charlie should have done more, or Charlie should have got more from like her apologies from people for like messing up her like mind and things like that. And I felt like that the romance was just cute, but it was also like lacking in a sense because it felt kind of a little insta love in a way. So the next young adult book that I did read was actually a YA fantasy novel, which is strange for me because I typically don't read YA fantasy. So this one's called Wicked Fox by Kat Cho, and it's part of her series or her duology called Gummy Ho series. And now this one is about a girl who is half human, half fox, and she's like a nine-tailed fox. She has like this like special pearl that she needs in order to survive. And then one day when she was like walking through a forest, she saves a young man who is relatively the same age as her, but she's also like 900 years old. They're the same age as in the sense that she never ages, so she just got stuck at the age that his age is. Okay, whatever. So the pearl ends up being in his body so that he is able to survive, and this is how they become friends. And then afterwards, this is kind of like a friends to lovers romance mixed with a lot of fantasy elements to it, also mixed with our main heroine's kind of like abusive mother who is emotionally abusive and but still loves her a lot, and they kind of have their own differences in opinions of what should happen in the world and what shouldn't happen, since they both have kind of like godly powers. And then you meet like a lot of different side characters who are fantastical elements to it, like, you know, we have a goblin, and then we have like problems with like the worlds and the real world and things like that. So this one was interesting to me because I typically don't read fantasy novels, but I find myself enjoying it a lot, mostly because it talks a lot about the Korean folklore. So that's why I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. It kept me entertained, which is like #1 on my list, because if I read a fantasy novel and I'm not enjoying it, it's gonna get a low rating for me because I typically don't read fantasy novels. So then afterwards, when I read fantasy novels and I'm actually vibing with it and I'm actually paying attention, then that means that it's a good one in my book. So the next book that I read is actually the second book in the series. It's called Vicious Spirits. Now this is about our 2 other characters that were best friends with our main characters from the first book, and this is kind of like a companion novel. This one was a lot more action driven. It was more focused on the mystical worlds, because what happened was that spirits were kind of leaking into the real world because there was like this portal or something. It was spooky in a lot of moments, which I really appreciated because I like it when books invoke some fear in me or evoke some emotions in me. And then this is also kind of like the romance between our 2 main characters too as well. Unfortunately, I didn't feel gripped. Like, I didn't really like this book as much as the first book because I didn't fully immerse myself in this book. So then that's why I only gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So the last 2 books I'm going to talk about is actually novellas that I did pick up from one of my new favorite romance novella authors called Laura Reyes. Now this one is called Sweet Rose, but then it was renamed as Beastly. But this one is a curvy girl Beauty and the Beast retelling. So this one is by a Black author, and it also features like a Black romance, which I really appreciate and really love. Now this one is kind of like a billionaire romance our billionaire is our hero. He's really angry all the time. He's really mean. He's very beastly. But then afterwards, what happens is that he's really sweet and kind to our heroine, and it follows our Beauty and the Beast romance trope, which I really liked and I really enjoyed. This one, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. So then the last novella that I want to talk about is actually another one from Laura Reyes. Now this one's called Love Me Harder. Now this one is about a main female heroine who is kind of like a con artist. She snuck her way into our hero's like ball, and then she pretends to be a maid, but she's actually there to steal like artifacts and like, you know, relics and things like that around his house that are worth a lot of money. And then afterwards he catches her, and then now he wants her as payment for all the crimes that she committed so that he wouldn't call the cops on her. And then this is kind of their love story. I really liked it. I thought it was really fun how our main heroine wasn't as innocent as all the other characters that I did read in the month, and it was just fun. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, and I definitely recommend you to check out Laura's novellas on Kindle Unlimited. So anyways, that is it for all the books I did read in March. So this year I'm trying to set a goal for myself for where I actually talk about all the books I do read and try to do a monthly wrap up and a monthly book haul, because I feel like that those are just 2 staple videos that I think a lot of people do appreciate when they subscribe to my channel. But let me know what videos you like to see from me the most. and I'll see what I can do. But until next time, I'll see you guys again. Bye.